Hey Fish Duck friends, Kurt here once again with another Fish Duck one-on-one video podcast. This week we welcome Dan Rubenstein. He's an Oregon graduate and a college football media giant. As co-host of the Solid Verbal podcast, which you should be listening to on the Grantland Network, a sports journalist, originally the SI campus tour guy, and now also co-host on the SBnation video network. He's a guy who keeps closely following with the Oregon Ducks and very funny. So thank you very much for joining us, Dan.
Of course, Kurt. Anything for you.
As a football expert, let's talk a little women's soccer. So
yes,
Oregon goalkeeper Abby Steele. You think she can improve on her freshman season?
There's always room for improvement. With that, I actually knew a girl when I was at Oregon. Her name is, I always forget if it's Kirsten or Kristen. But she was on the team, and I think she was pretty good. She was a journalism student, but beyond her, I don't know anything about Oregon women's soccer.
Okay, well, we'll touch on the more popular football version in this country then. First, though, let's talk a little bit about you, how you ended up being an Oregon Duck, and all that you're doing in the media these days, because we see your face and hear your voice quite often, particularly Oregon fans. I know you have a very large following for Solid Verbal and what you're doing now with SBnation.
Yeah, grew up in Los Angeles in the Valley. Kind of knew I wanted to do journalism in college, was always a media head, always liked sports. Wasn't positive if I wanted to do journalism or business, but applied to USC and got into USC for like spring semester. I actually thought about going to Washington. I got into Syracuse and their like broadcast program. And I applied to Oregon. I had always just liked, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the football team or for whatever it was, the university. And then after investigating it more, saw they had a good journalism school. And it was local enough on the West Coast. And so like when I was doing my visits to schools and I went to Washington, went to Oregon, I just really liked Eugene, really liked Oregon. It wasn't too small, wasn't too big. And when evaluating everything, it just sort of made sense. Wanted to get away. Like all my friends went to USC for college, and it was great for them. But kind of getting out of LA was important to me. Go to a college town, see something new, and I could study what I wanted to study, and it just sort of made sense. So I became a Duck in 2001. From 2001 to 2005, I was in Eugene, and 9/11 happened like 4 days before I was supposed to go to school, and took a train, because all planes were grounded, took a train from Chatsworth to Eugene, Oregon, with all of my life belongings in a suitcase.
So after your time in Eugene, you became one of the most public vocal voices promoting the Ducks out there. Maybe not intentionally so, but it comes out in subtleties. We first started seeing you as the SI campus tour guy. How did you get into that?
In 2006, so I graduated in 05, 2006, I started my own website called the College Football Tour Guide. I came up with an idea to travel around just the West Coast, interview drunk tailgaters, ask them funny football questions, put it all on camera, and see if people liked it. And people did like it. I mean, not like numbers that we'd see today, but they do 10, 15,000 hits on YouTube, which was really, I mean, that was insane to me that people liked this, and funded it myself. I was living at home at the time, so I didn't have a ton of overhead. Actually, no, I wasn't living at home at the time. I was actually paying rent in Studio City.
Like a real person.
Like a real human adult person. But I had saved money because I had lived at home. I've told this story a lot, and I knew living at home was part of it, from living at home. And it did well enough, and I sent it around to different just people. And actually how I got hooked up with SI was I sent a reel I put together of my favorite stuff from my journeys to Arash Markazi, who's now at ESPN LA, who was at the time running the MySpace page for the SI on Campus site, and I just sent it to that, the MySpace account for SI on Campus, and he was running it, loved it, and like passed it sort of along the train. I met with people at SI in New York, and they loved it, and then I got paid to go to college football games and tailgate and eat people's food and drink people's beer, travel the country, and hold a mic that said SI.com. So it was essentially, like, I tell people, like, I had the greatest job that can exist when I was 23.
So it's all downhill from there, right?
It's all downhill from there. So yeah, I was at SI from 2007 through 2009. I did 3 years at SI. And yeah, traveled. I eventually ended up doing more than just college football stuff. But yeah, I added a little bit of Oregon flair when I went to Washington and when I went to Oregon. And I am a Duck, and I'm always going to be a Duck. So yeah, it was pretty cool for me. And like one of the great things was, I don't know if I haven't told a lot of people this story, but in 2000. So between the time I did it and by the time I got hired at SI, I sent a DVD to Neil Everett at ESPN, like just coldly. I said, "Hey, I'm a Duck. I did this. Let me know what you think."
Right.
And I was like, I'd sent out 1 million DVDs, didn't expect anything, and got a call from an 860 number, like randomly one afternoon, and hello, and he said, "Hello, is this Dan? Is Dan?" Like, yeah. He's like, "Neil Everett, ESPN." Like he said it like that.
So like, you're thinking prank call, right?
Yeah, of course. But it was a Connecticut number. I could see that it was a weird number. And he could not have been sweeter and more nice and told me all about his time at Oregon and like what he had done after and like had unbelievably encouraging words for me. Did not have to do that. And it was just like, it was that moment where I was like, all right, I got to keep bothering people about this. This is good. So then I ended up at SI, and it was all awesome.
Very nice. Well, and the SI connection led to the next step, which of course is the Solid Verbal podcast, which is fantastic. I can't promote that thing enough. We absolutely love it at fishduck.com. We have a link to it. If you haven't checked it out before, please subscribe. It's on the Grantland Network now, but you started it just on a whim with a fellow SI writer, right?
Yeah, started on a whim. I had never met Ty. Ty was writing for the SI on Campus page, which is the site my videos were going up on. And he had written some, he had done these columns, it was called Campus Quick Slants, and he was like comparing something. It was like Notre Dame season versus like Chun-Li's whatever from Street Fighter. It was something really funny, and I sent him a note, and I said, "This is really funny, this is really good." And like I gave him like all my answers to like his like versus questions or something like that. And then he wrote me back, he was like, "Dude, you're hilarious, I love your videos." And we were like, "Oh wow, we are really lame, and we should stop doing it." And we just like started emailing about college football, and like I could tell that he was like a huge, funny college football nerd, and that we had similar sensibilities. And we were just emailing randomly, making fun of Jen Sturger, whose job I took at SI. And one day we were talking about, just all through email, like, hell, there's no college football podcast. There literally was not a college football podcast that existed. This is back in 2008. Which sounds like so long ago, but it's really weird that nobody was talking about college football in like the podcasting realm, which was still fairly young. And we decided like on a whim to just start recording, and we would interview our editor. We would interview like the few people we knew. Our editor at the time was Andy Gray, who now runs the SI Vault. And if you want anything from the SI Vault, you got to go through Andy. But we would interview Jimmy Traina, and then like Stu Mandel. And we would tell SI, like, "Hey, nobody's doing a college football podcast. We'll do this for you for free. Right. And you can just put it up." And they were like, "We don't know about podcasting and such. Yeah. We don't know about selling it to advertisers." We're like, no. We don't even need to pay us. You don't need to just put it up. And they were like, "Well, let's see. It's a complicated thing. And you actually still like can't just download Stu Mandel's show from SI like an MP3. Like you have to go through like 4 different pages." But we started the Solid Verbal. And we initially had like 11 people listening, and that eventually grew, and it grew some more, and we got guests on that. We were fortunate enough to say that we were at SI, so we were able to get different media members that we knew or knew we could probably get a hold of. Right. And it kept growing, and we eventually we were on Sirius, a network called The Score on Sirius Radio, a Canadian network that the Basketball Jones is still on, which we made $0 from. And they said they would send us to the national championship, which they did, and paid us back about 8 months later. There's all sorts of horror stories about them. But it was very cool because we could get coaches on the show when we'd say we're Sirius Satellite Radio. Right. And they'd be like, "Terrific." I met a bunch of people at ESPN and ESPNU, and one of those people was Dave Jacoby, who is now on Grantland. He's like in charge of their podcast, and he's an awesome gentleman, and had us on. And so now we're on the Grantland network. That's
awesome. Well, I love the show. You've developed an entire Solid Verbal army at this point. Yes. It's really amazing how far your show has reached.
Yeah. No, it's very cool, and it's unbelievable support from Duck people all the time. Like it's funny. It makes me laugh every single time. Like I'm talking to Ty on the show, and he's like, we're pretty popular with Oregon people. And for whatever reason, it's awesome that Oregon people have responded. I guess maybe it's just because I happen to have gone to Oregon and get to nerd out on the show, and they feel like maybe there aren't enough ducks out there behind microphones or cameras or something. But yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, it's a very funny show for those who have not checked it out. There's usually about 2 episodes a week. It's free. Can't argue with the price, so go check it out, solidverbal.com. And then in the midst of doing all of this with SI and Solid Verbal, that's now expanded into a whole new field, and that you've been writing, and you're also now connected with SBnation and launching a whole new video division.
So I was very fortunate. I came into contact. It's a whole long story, but I was put into contact with ESPN and ESPNU people who were very kind about the things I did at SI, and shot a pilot called Unite. Sort of the idea of being a late night college sports show, sort of like Sports Nation at like midnight on ESPNU, which I have no idea if that makes any sense to anybody out there, but with some really talented people, and I've gotten to know a lot of people from that. And it didn't work out, but they were really interested in Spencer Hall as being sort of like our Anthony Bourdain and like roving crazy person from, of course, Every Day Should Be Saturday. So I sort of put them in touch with Spencer, and Spencer was like, "Oh, we're actually working on our own thing, and we've been tossing around your name as possibly somebody that we want to like build this around." And I was like, "What? Full-time job?
I can actually get paid to do it?"
Yes, wow. American currency. I met with the awesome people they're actually really awesome, like Jim Bankoff and all these people that run SBnation. Last November, they flew me out to New York to meet with all of them and explained everything that was going on, and met Bomani and Amy K. Nelson and Matt Ufford and all these awesome people that have succeeded wildly on the internet, and showed me videos that they had already shot, and they were like, "Well, we want you to, you know, host video for us and be a part of SBnation as we launch this video deal. We have a deal with YouTube and Google. They've sort of given us a grant along with a number of other companies to produce original content." And I could not say no. They said, "You have to move out to New York." I said, "Well, let me think about that." I've been in LA my whole life. But no, it's an amazing opportunity. It's been awesome. I work in Midtown Manhattan. We shoot all these great videos every day. It's very much a startup. Like, we're still very much kicking the can around to figure out what we're doing and how we can do it. But I'm one of the like older people there at 28, which is weird. And we have all these like 24-year-old recent like film school geniuses with motion graphics and video editing. And it's pretty insane, and the things we're working on are great too. So far so good. Long hours, but I really enjoy going to work and the people I work with. So yeah, the SBnation.
So SBnation, just go to youtube.com, type in SBnation. There's a couple of videos per day. They're always hilarious, informative, fantastic, a wide variety of stuff. Every time I watch Spencer's Hall stuff, I sit back and go, what did I just watch?
He's an insane person, and it's amazing. And one of the things that I love about Spencer is, I don't know why he's on the internet. He's like too smart for the internet. He should be writing for GQ or something like that. Like, if you've seen, like, he just went like with Mississippi State. He embedded himself with Mississippi State and Dan Mullen for a day. Like, I'm thrilled that I'm affiliated with the same company that he's affiliated with, but he could be making a lot more money. Don't anybody tell him that. So it's really cool. There's no, to me, he's the best college football writer just in terms of sheer use of language and context that there is. So it's awesome.